Let's head overseas now on Sunrise. It is the case sending absolute shockwaves through Hollywood. The son of much-loved director Rob Reiner has been charged with killing his parents after they were found stabbed to death in their Los Angeles home earlier this week.
It's a horrible story. Now 32-year-old Nick Reiner is facing the possibility of life in prison without parole or even the death penalty if found guilty. Let's bring in US entertainment reporter Brian Balthazar for the latest. Good to speak to you, Brian. So, do we know anything about the events leading up to this murder?
Yes, while police have not released an official timeline of events, we have learned through additional reporting that Nick and his parents both attended a holiday party the night before thrown by late-night host Conan O'Brien. And at that event, there were reports that Nick was behaving erratically and eventually erupted in an argument with his parents. His parents subsequently left, although we don't know if that was the impetus for their departure. What we do know is that hours later, his parents were found murdered in their home. There is some surveillance video that shows that he had stopped for a soda at a nearby gas station, and we're seeing some surveillance video of him appearing at another gas station sometime later, 15 miles away, when he was arrested. But other than that, we don't have a complete timeline of what was happening.
It trickles out, doesn't it, the information over the weeks. Rob's son Nick has spoken over the years about his struggles with drug addiction, homelessness. Now, the pair even made this film inspired about his journey back in 2015. It was called Being Charlie. They spoke about it, did lots of interviews. What was their relationship like?
It's interesting, as we all are looking back at those interviews, many reports are showing that even in those interviews about that project, there is tension. And you can see that how the addiction was handled on both sides. There was tension between the two of them. This was meant to be a kind of an act of healing for the family. Ultimately, they said in some reports that he was sober then for the last 6 years. Rob Reiner saying as recently as this year that his son was doing fine. Of course, we don't know what happens behind closed doors or outside of those conversations, but clearly there was strain. Even as a young child, there are reports that Nick was prone to tantrums and had a troubled time even as a child. So we're learning more as we dig into this.
In terms of the case, what happens from here?
Well, he did finally appear in court. Initially, he was not deemed mentally fit to appear in court, but he did attend a hearing, and he was in a vest, what's called a suicide prevention smock, actually. He appeared behind glass. And this is designed for people who are fear that they may cause self-harm. He was also shackled. He did not speak much, but only to agree to postponing an arraignment until January 6th of 2026, at which case, and we know, as you mentioned, he could be facing life in prison without parole or the death penalty, even though there is a moratorium on executions in California. But they could still seek the death penalty in the event that that moratorium is eventually lifted.
And Rob Reiner was huge in Hollywood, wasn't he? He was behind iconic movies that went back as far as When Harry Met Sally, The Princess Bride. How much of a tragedy is this for Hollywood?
It really is unthinkable to so many, just the fact, the way that it happened, but also the imprint that he's made on Hollywood and the world, really. His films provided emotional landmarks for so many of us. There's so many genres, from romantic comedies like When Harry Met Sally to horror like Misery, or comedy like This Is Spinal Tap. He really crossed all genres. And it showed the depth, what he really reached into. He didn't do blockbuster superhero films. He told human stories about the human connection. And I think there isn't a person on this planet who wasn't touched by at least one, if not many, of his films.
What's connected to politics as well? Barack Obama sent a tribute, but Donald Trump has weighed in too. What did he say?
Well, he's being met with a lot of criticism. His initial tweet on his platform attributed it to Trump derangement syndrome, implying that his political railings against Donald Trump contributed to this occurrence. That was immediately met with vitriol from both sides and both parties. It's hard, even as a journalist trying to be subjective, to not acknowledge the fact that they were tasteless remarks. He has not backed down off them, but many of his colleagues on both the Republican and Democratic sides have said that they were unthinkable comments and unnecessary.
Okay, thank you, Brian.